For Monday, July 10th, 2023. Just want to make sure the video is working. Okay. Approval of the agenda, please. Councillor Julich.
That the July 10th, 2023 special council meeting agenda be approved as presented.
Seconder, Councillor Dussault. All in favor? Carried. New business. Sidewalk Capital Project, report dated July 10th, 2023 from the Chief Administrator Officer regarding Sidewalk Capital Project. Before I take the recommendations, Mr. Woodward, can you explain the process and what transpired for us to be here?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I received the application from the Public Works Superintendent or Director of Operations, I reviewed the request for the $268,000, and I reviewed the source of funding that would be allowed to be able to provide it for it. And so I authorized the $268,000 in consultation with my chief financial officer wasn't here. And then in the last few days, I've discussed this with the chief financial officer, and she advised me that the standards and the requirements are that before a project begins, that council require approval of that additional expenditure. And so it's been my experience in the past where we were over budget on items, as long as there was sufficient funding and the CFO or myself approved them, we would make up a list of all of those items in October or approximately October, and we would have a list of all of those and they would be approved by council. And but that's not the case anymore. My CFO advised me that that is not a proper procedure anymore, and that we should be taking anything that goes over budget to council.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that. I just wanted to make sure that we're aware it would happen and what transpired for us to be here. That it was already approved once. Now it's in front of us to comment and discuss and decide what council wants to do. I'm going to take and move the first recommendation. The council receives this report for discussion. Take a seconder, Councilor Norberry. All in favor? Carried. So my first question is going to be, and I don't think we've had a really good discussion on what are the sidewalks that this replacement is going to happen on. And I understand that some of that is none of my business. But the question I would have in regards to, is any of it private or business? And if that's the case, who's paying for that? So I know some of the areas downtown, a business may own 2 or 3 feet of that sidewalk before it hits the end. Are we replacing it right up to that building? And if we're doing a business part of that, are they paying for that, or is that being covered through taxation dollars and a grant?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I should have provided a map so that gave you that specific area. I apologize for that. But the Director of Operations, Mr. Bradley, can respond to that. Mr. Bradley?
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, there's 2 parts to it. One where you talked about who's paying for it, and the other one about the construction design. Mr. Bradley is speaking to the construction design. I'll speak to the other.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. The downtown sidewalk renewal, it'll be encompassing the downtown core, aside from the Fresh Mart grocery store. It'll be everything adjacent to that, and around the post office, up to the doorways of the businesses.
So I guess my question back to Mr. Woodward would be, are we recouping any of this cost from the businesses?
In your original program that was completed in 2022, there was no mention of any of that information. I researched the information back on the approval process, and there was nothing that indicated that you wanted to do that. At this point in time, all of the funding are from grants, the gas tax grant, the PR funding grant, and the Canada Community Revitalization Fund. And so at that point, I don't think it would be appropriate for us to do a presentation to the businesses. And because of our time circumstance, I think it would be very difficult to do that. Now, in saying that, in times gone by, I've been involved in where the businesses were developing something downtown, and the cost was allocated and approved by council and referred to those businesses, and they looked at that information, and whether it was a large amount or small amount or however it was done, they approved it so that they would pay for it. But in this case, because I think of the circumstances and the funding, at this point in time, we have not reviewed that.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'll just talk in regards to 2022. There was no discussion where this cement work was going to be done at. There was no discussion in regards that it was going to be against businesses, buildings that are business owned. There really wasn't an open sight of exactly which sidewalks, where, and how close to the buildings we were going to get. That's my understanding, so that could be why that we didn't look at that, because I have a concern that to me, I look up at this, that if that's the case, I know there's a business in town that's looking at taking out some gravel and adding cement closer to his building. Should we be paying for that now too? That's how I look at it. I'm glad I heard that the business I own is not included in this, because I would not partake in that, because again, that's a private business. And that would be my concern. But, Councilor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Kakalka. So for myself, I'm happy doing the sidewalks all the way up to all the businesses. They pay taxes in our community. We're not using tax funds, but I think, even though they are businesses, they still should receive some sort of benefit of being part of a municipality. If we're going to do this for the entirety of our downtown, I say we do it. Thankfully, we are not using taxation for this, so I would support it all the way up to the doors.
Councilor Clickash?
Yeah, I just noticed there's no square meter cost here for the concrete being poured. And I'd like to see a square meter cost, and how many square meters are on the business-owned property, so we know exactly how much we're paying for.
Mr. Woodward?
That detail wouldn't come before council. That would be in the contractual arrangement that the engineer has. That's specific detail that's not usually generated for council.
Why not?
It's a detail of engineering and design and all that stuff.
You can't go back to the engineers and ask them?
Not back and forth, directed to me, and then, sorry, I don't want to get back and forth. No, my apologies, I just don't want to go back and forth.
Yeah, sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
What's that? Perhaps Mr. Bradley can answer that question. Hang on a minute.
That's going to shut you off.
I'm sorry, I cannot answer that question.
Councillor Clickash? Also, have we got releases from the owners of the building, as damage releases, in case we damage their building when we're doing this concrete right up to the building itself?
Sorry. Did you want me to, Mr.?
Yeah, Mr. Woodward, sorry.
Do you want me to? I can ask our engineering firm and the contractor that's doing the work to make sure that they have those releases, but I'm not aware of them at this point.
And have the owners been notified that you're going to do this?
We're going to.
Mr. Woodward, please direct them to me.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, I just don't want to get, because the only reason I asked that from council is so that if we start to go sideways, that's why I don't just let staff talk, is if it goes sideways, we have a way of stopping it. That's the only reason I asked for that. Mr. Woodward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we are going to notify all the businesses. They are aware that the municipality has been out checking the numbers and looking at everything, but we're going to officially notify them actually tomorrow morning. Yep. So that's 2 weeks in advance of the project.
Your Worship, I just wonder about the damage, though, that can be caused. Like if we are jackhammering concrete out and all of a sudden a piece goes up and goes through the window, are we going to be responsible for all this?
Mr. Woodward?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, the contractor that we will have, the engineer has engaged, will be responsible for any damage. That'll be under his insurance portfolio.
Good, thanks.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
our CFO like to express an opinion on this, some of this stuff?
Thank you. I just want to make it very clear that if these sidewalks are on business property, it's illegal for us to assist business. We cannot use gas tax money. We cannot use PRA money because that is taxation money. So it is illegal for us to do that. So we have to be very careful on this if it's business property, not public property.
It's called assisting business.
Yes.
That's why I was asking those questions. That's why I asked that. It's very concerning to me. That's why I asked. Mr. Woodward, that's why I asked that question, because I wasn't sure, and I'll be honest. I mean, Councilor Norbury maybe fill me in if I've missed something in 2022. But when this came before the previous council, there was really no map of where we were doing. There was talk, pretty much doing majority of it in-house, and I understand that has changed. That scope has changed on our sidewalks. That scope has also changed on our golf course road, and I totally get it. We had a different individual that figured that he could do it all in-house. He had all these tickets, and that maybe wasn't the case. But we're in a different realm now. We have different staff and stuff like that. But I never ever seen a map. I never knew what businesses they were doing or nothing. But that discussion definitely was asked by this council, previous council. But Councillor Clickash actually brought that up previously. I think it was in budget in regards to where are we doing business sidewalks, and it really wasn't answered then as well. So that is a concern of mine. I mean, Councilor Norbury, I understand your opinion of it, but that's a concern, I think, from my side. But I'm going to go to Councillor Hoffman, then Councillor Noxana.
Thank you, Mayor. Now, I understand that might be an issue, but I think we might need to figure out a way around that, whether we partially fund it in a different way, because in the end, what you're talking about is cutting a foot or 2 feet of concrete out and then doing all the sidewalks and leaving a chunk of 40-year-old concrete next to the building because we didn't take enough time to figure that out. And maybe it is simpler, maybe it won't look as...
Hang on a second. Staff have input? I'm sorry, I can't hear Councillor Hoffman. Did staff have something?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I did the research on the information on this, there wasn't any reference that we were going to be on private property. And unfortunately, I didn't see a map. And even if I did see a map and consulted with everybody, because it's like a refurbishing, I don't know if we could specifically identify what is the business area and what is not the business area. I would certainly not be proposing that we doing work on a business area that was articulated so that we were given a benefit to a business. But I didn't see any of that information on it, and I guess I assumed wrong that we were replacing a sidewalk that had nothing to do with, it was on business property, right? So.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, I mean, myself, I understand you've just been here a short time. And to be honest, I don't think we've had a very thorough discussion in regards to the cementing. I mean, especially with other new staff as well. So I think that's what's brought us here. Councillor Hoffman, sorry to interrupt you.
No worries. I just think splitting it up to business versus non-business on the sidewalk, I mean, if it's an example, if we're talking outside the post office, are we talking about cutting the sidewalk and redoing 2/3 of it to the street curb and leaving the rest undone, just as one? It doesn't sound like the most cost-effective way of replacing a sidewalk anyways, to split it into 2 jobs, which mean, and I guess what we really need is a percentage of the total 1,800 or 20 square meters that we're actually talking about here. If it's 20 meters, then I would just say fund it in a way that is legal. And if we're talking 200 square meters, then that's a very different conversation to be had. I don't want to delay it, and I'm wondering if there's any consequences if we do delay it. Do we lose this grant funding if we're not doing it in time this year?
I'll ask those questions. I think even if it's only a small amount, it's still assisting a business is a concern. Mr. Woodward, is there if I understand Councillor Hoffman's question, we're in a short build season. We live in Tumble Ridge in the north. Does this affect our grants and stuff like that when we ask staff to dig into this thoroughly? Because I'll be honest with you, I know in 2022 I didn't see any information We knew it was going to be in-house. Still waiting for that detailed information to come back. The individual decided to move on to a different municipality, and there was nobody, I believe, in Public Works for a few months until it was filled by an individual.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The project has already been approved. I approved it through the engineers and the subcontractor, so this project is going ahead. So if there's consequences with the review of the business area, then it's going to be after the fact. If we prevent the contractor from proceeding at this point in time, I said it's only 2 weeks away, then we'll suffer the consequences of maybe even something like a breach of contract. So I can't stop the project from going ahead at this point. So we're in a bit of a dilemma on that. I'm sure that there's a reasonable alternative to review the business areas, and we wouldn't misfracture or try to redo the cement. The sidewalk cement would be up to their businesses, and we can have a discussion with them after the fact that they would be responsible for that cost, and I can attend to looking at that during this process or before this process takes place, but the contract still has to be completed. It's actually almost 2 years old at this point.
Okay.
What's that? Oh, and our CFO has something to add as well.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to mention that if it is on business property, we need to know if it's common property or business. If it's common property in front of the post office, which is municipal owned, then it's municipal infrastructure, which would be replaced.
Can I just interrupt you there for a second? I'd like clarity. I actually think this should be moved into close. We're starting to talk legal, starting to talk implications. I believe this should be moved into closed. When we're talking about we could be accountable for contract, I think this needs to be closed. If we can get the information, I'm going to take a 5-minute recess so we can read out the right transcript for going to close, but I think we're getting offline here. So I'm going to call a 5-minute recess. I'd like to make a motion for close. And under the community charter, it'll be under C, labor relations or other employee relations. G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. And J, information that's prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under Section 21 of the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act. Seconder, Councillor Hoffman. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, back to the open. Rise and report is the council has deferred 3.1 sidewalk capital project until staff can bring the proper information before council. Take adjournment. Oh, sorry. Yeah, resolution, no notice motion. Okay. Resolution to close meeting. Councillor Dussault.
That the July 10th, 2023 special council meeting be adjourned.
Nope, no, we need to go to closed.
Oh, resolution, recommendation that the July 10th, 2023 special council meeting be closed to the public to permit discussion about labor relations and other employee relations in accordance with Section 91C of the Community Charter.
Seconder. Councillor Hoffman, all in favor? Carried. 5-minute recess.